In this Learn to Surf video, we're going to cover what sort of equipment you'll need to take with you when you go surfing, how to choose the right board for a beginner surfer, how to apply surf wax to the board, how to paddle your board effectively in the surf, most importantly how to stand up on your surfboard, and then finally we're going to look at some common errors that beginners often encounter when learning to surf.
Before we can join those guys out there in the lineup, what we need first is to get some equipment together. The first bit of equipment we're going to need out there when we're surfing is a wetsuit. Wetsuit is really important for keeping us warm. It also helps protect you against little bumps and grazes as well. This one here is a winter wetsuit. It's really important if you're surfing through January to get a nice thick warm wetsuit. It'll make a whole load of difference. This one's got a neck zip on the front of it, but a lot of them have a zip on the back, so when you're putting it on, make sure you zip to the back and do it up. Make sure your wetsuit fits you nice and tightly as well. There's nothing worse than a loose wetsuit, because that's just going to keep filling up with water. That's going to make you colder and make it much harder to paddle. A few accessories you can put with your wetsuit if you're particularly cold out there. Probably most importantly is the hood. A lot of the heat is lost from your head, so a simple hood like this, it's not very thick and it's not very cumbersome, will keep you a lot warmer out there in the surf. Other appendages like gloves, etc. It's really important because your hands get very cold very quickly, especially as you're paddling through very cold water. And again, boots, keep your toes warm. Also really important if you're launching over rocks or you're just out there in the surf, it's going to stop you cutting your feet on anything, which again is also good. The next most important bit of equipment after your own personal equipment is the board. There are many types of board, and we're going to talk about this in a little bit more detail. Okay, here we have two examples of surfboards that can be used in the surf. Surfing, perhaps more than any other sport, is complicated by excessive jargon and lots of different names for things which are essentially the same, and this is so true with boards. So what I've done here is I've tried to break it down into the basic types of board that a beginner would like to use and try and steer you away from those more complex and advanced boards that aren't going to help you to learn when you're just starting out. The two boards we've got here are what's called a fun board or a mini mouse style board, this green one, and then this one here is a more classic shortboard. There are many other designs and types of surfboard as well, but these are the two that we want to clarify and not get mixed up between. The mini mouse or the fun boards are really good for those who are just starting out in surfing. And in fact, if you were going to buy a surfboard today, I would recommend that you bought a hard top fun board or mini mouse. These shortboards here look really nice, they look really snazzy and fast, and often have great graphics, but they're not really going to help you out there in the surf because they're so unstable and manoeuvrable, they're just going to try and throw you off the whole time. The fun boards, on the other hand, are really good for learning to surf. But before you even step onto a fun board, there's another type of board that you might want to use just for your very first few sessions or so. So this board is what's called a foamy, or sometimes known as a swelly as well. These are often rented by surf hire places and are really good if you're just starting out. The benefits that they have is that they're made out of really soft foam and often have a very grippy deck as well, which is going to help you. If you were to fall off or collide with it, you're not going to be injured or hurt. They're also really big and buoyant and floaty, and buoyancy is really important when we're learning to surf because we want to float into the waves and catch them easily. Whereas perhaps you see this shortboard here, it's much smaller, more condensed, and therefore it's going to sink in the waves, which is great if you want to turn, but it's not so good if you're just trying to catch the wave in the first place. The mini mal has got many advantages over the shortboard, and we're just going to discuss these now. Firstly, as you can see, it's slightly longer than the shortboard, and it's just generally bigger, and that again, like the swelly, makes it more buoyant. And again, buoyancy is great for beginners. You'll also notice that the board's a lot wider than the short board, and wideness means stability. Stability is great for us when we're just learning to stand up, because we don't want something that's going to throw us off the whole time. Just try and avoid a short board, especially if you're looking to buy a board, because you may be wasting your money on a board that perhaps is not going to help you out when you get on the water. On the top surface of the board here is some sticky stuff called wax. This is what helps us stick on the board and means you won't fall off so easily. On the foamies or the swellies, where they have a textured surface on the deck, you don't need wax, so that's not important. But on these boards, we're just going to show you how to wax your board to get the most out of it. And this is surf wax. It's a wax much like candle wax, but it's just a lot more sticky in consistency. You can buy this from any good surf shop in town here. But what's important when you do buy it is that you buy the right sort of wax for the water conditions that you'll be using it in. As you can see behind me, this water here is quite cold or cool, so you want to buy wax that's advertised as cool or cold water wax. If you buy hot or warm water wax, what happens is the wax will be too hard in the water you're using it on, and it won't be sticky enough. The best way to apply the wax to your board is like this. Get a good firm hold of your wax, and you want to pull it across the board. As you do so, it's going to vibrate, and you want to encourage these vibrations as they will create little ridges in the wax as you apply it. Now we've got a good coating of wax on a board, we're ready to go surfing. Some people recommend replacing the wax every time you go out. I just find I top it up whenever my board seems a little less sticky. Now we've covered what board to use and how to set it up to go surfing, we're just going to look at a few safety features to keep us safe out there before we hit the waves and have a go at standing up.
Although surfing's not a particularly dangerous sport, it's important that we learn a little bit about surf safety before we head into the waves. Also, as a beginner, if you don't feel safe, you're not going to learn as quickly as you otherwise might. So, to improve our understanding of surf safety, we're going to look at a few fundamentals, see how a lifeguard service works, try and understand rips and currents so that we can avoid them when we head into the surf. The first and most important lesson in surf safety is never go surfing alone. There are many reasons for this, but mostly it's so that you've always got someone out there who's looking out for you. They can spot if you get in trouble, and they can also go and get help if you're unable to yourself. When you're learning, it's always nice to have someone along to motivate and support you, and they may even be able to offer you a few tips. The RNLI operates a lifeguard service on most of the Cornish beaches. This service runs through the summer, from 9 to 5 every day. They often work at weekends and through most school holidays. For more information on that, you should head to their website. It's important to always take the advice of the lifeguards, because most of them are very good surfers themselves, and they're only thinking about your safety and the safety of the other beach users. To help them do this, they've got a system of flags. The first and most obvious flag is a big red flag. This means that, in their opinion, the conditions are too dangerous to go swimming or surfing in, and no one should enter the water. The other two flags are often used at the same time, and they're used to split the beach up into zones. The first zone being for swimming and bodyboarders, and the second zone being for surfers. The reason they do this is to separate the surfers with their hard edge boards from the swimmers, so that they don't collide and there's no injuries. And this is why it's really important to stay in your surfing zone and not stray into the bodyboarding zone. Rip currents have always been kind of mythical, but it's important that we can understand how a rip is formed so that we can predict how it will act on the water. Rips are formed as crashing, breaking waves push water in towards the beach. What this means is there's a large volume of water trapped in by the beach, and this builds up pressure. Eventually, this pressure is great enough that the water can force its way back out through the breaking waves and the rip is formed. What's important to notice about how a rip is formed is that it's a cyclical process and it never extends out further than the last breaking wave. Therefore, if you're caught in a rip, you're unlikely to travel out further than the last breaking wave, and you can always catch the waves back into the beach and get out. Another important thing to notice is that by the beach, the rip is often going parallel to the beach, and that's what tends to push beginner surfers out of the flag zone. A rip can be identified in the surf often as an area where the waves don't seem to be breaking as much, and it's often a choppy area of the water. You may also see sand or debris being pushed out towards the sea. Here are some arrows again demonstrating the cyclical nature of the rip, and again you can see how the water is travelling parallel to the beach, and that's going to push you out of the zones. Another important rule when surfing is to never let the board get between you and the wave. This is especially true when we're trying to push our board out through the waves in order to surf back in. As you can see here, I'm pushing my board forward and lifting it slightly over the wave as it approaches, but I'm always keeping to one side of it so that I'll be out of the way if it does rush the board back towards the beach. Once I've pushed my board out through the surf till it's about chest deep, or to when I'm struggling to push it any further, this is a good time to turn the board around and start surfing back towards the beach.
Okay, now we've pushed our board out through the wave and we've got it pointing back towards the beach. It's time to learn how to catch a wave. When we're lying on our surfboard, we want to make sure that we're in the middle and that we're not too far nose down or too far nose up. It sounds very simple, but it can lead to a lot of common errors in catching your first waves. So try and make sure that when you're lying on your surfboard and just paddling on the flat water, the board is flat and the nose doesn't dig into the water, or it's not riding too high up. If anything, it needs to be within 1 or 2 inches with the surface of the water. If you sit too far forward like this, as you accelerate down the wave, the front of the nose is going to dig into the water and it's going to throw you over the top like that. If you're too far back on the board, the nose is going to be sticking up in the air, but more importantly, the tail is going to be digging into the water. That's going to make it really hard to build up any speed on your board, and you won't be able to catch up with the wave and catch it. So you're just going to lag behind in the surf. So remember, before you start, make sure you're in the middle of the board on the centre line, and also that your balance is correct, so you can catch those waves nice and easily. Now I'm just going to talk you through the basics of paddling to the wave. It's really simple, it's a bit like front crawl, but a good strong paddle can make all the difference between catching the wave and not. So it's important to get it right before we start trying to stand up on the board. When you're in the water with the board pointing back towards the beach, the best way to climb onto the board is from the back. Like so. Now we're on the board, like we just talked about, we want to make sure that we're not too far forward or too far back. Like so, and we just check that the nose is out of the water. When we're paddling, we want to use long arm strokes and dig our arms deep into the water. This is going to be way more effective than doing little small strokes to the outside. Again, we want to be quite relaxed on the board, paddling slowly but powerfully, rather than fast and frantically. What we're going to do is we'll look behind us and see the white water coming towards us. Then we're going to start to paddle slowly but powerfully, building up momentum so that by the time the white water hits us, it's going to propel us forwards. Once we feel the board being accelerated by the wave, we're going to stop paddling, place both our hands on the deck and push up. This pushes our board forwards and down the wave and make sure we've caught the wave. The next step is really what learning to surf is all about. Before we go through it on the board, I just want to talk through a few fundamentals using a few lines in the sand. What I'm going to do now is draw 2 lines in the sand to help you get your front foot in the right position when you pop up and surf. This is a great exercise to practice at home, You don't have to do it at the beach. The two lines are the centre line, like we talked about earlier, between the nose of the board and the tail of the board. I'm going to draw another line across it, which is between my two hands as I place them under my chest, like we did in step 3. So if I was to get on my imaginary board now, like so, and as you can see, that line's between my two hands and I'm over the centre line of my board. So we'll paddle for the wave, put our hands down, push up and wait. Now we're going to pop. When we pop, we want to bring our front foot up to just behind this cross here. So, like this. And that means we've got ourselves nice and forward on the board, we've also got our feet in the centre line. And that's really important for our balance when we come to stand up on the board for real. Okay, let's try the same thing, but on the surfboard this time. Again, this is a great exercise to do at home if you can't get to the beach that easily. Watch my feet this time as I push up onto the board. So we paddle, we catch the wave and we push up and wait, and then push up onto the board. It's important to notice here is I've got both my feet over the centre line, I've kept my shoulders low, and I'm looking forward to the way I want to go. What I'm going to run through now is a few common errors that people make when learning to surf, so that hopefully you can try and avoid them when you're trying to learn to surf. The first one, which we've already talked about, is lying too far forward on the board, which means that you're going to nosedive and crash as soon as you even try and get on the wave. Be wary of this, but then again, don't stay too far back on your board, otherwise you'll always struggle to get into the wave in the first place. Another common error I'll demonstrate for you now. What happens here is that when people go for the pop, they go to their knees first rather than going straight to their feet, like so. What this means is you end up kneeling on your board and you're largely out of control and it's very hard to balance. It can also mean that you'll end up having to take one hand off to get your foot through. That is going to make you fall over into the water. So try and jump straight onto your feet, because it's a much quicker and much more stable way of getting up. The third common error stems largely from the second one, and that's people who have their feet too close together or not on the centre line when they get up. This is a common problem with the knee technique, because it can lead to you ending up standing with your feet across the board and a little bit too far together. This is going to make it very hard to balance, and you're likely to fall off early in your surfing career. The last problem which some people experience, which we already talked about, is just standing up way too quickly. What that does is it makes your centre of gravity way too high, and it's really hard to balance. So try and stay low and squat on your board until you get stable, and then rise up into the surfing position.
Now that we've covered how to stand up and some common errors people face when learning to surf, it's time to get out there and practice. Remember, a little bit of practice on the shore beforehand will be quite helpful, as it will help you put into practice what hopefully you've learned in this video. And having watched this video, you should now know a little bit more about what equipment you need to go surfing and what board to choose. You should also understand a little bit of basic surf safety. We've covered also how to catch a wave and then how to stand up on your board. Once you've mastered all this, you're basically a competent surfer, and you can go on to practice going along the wave and other more advanced techniques. Thanks for watching this video, and I wish you the best of luck in learning how to surf.